Hello, welcome back to Friends with Cinefits. I am your host, Alex, and for this episode, I am joined by my former partner in crime at Watch Skip Plus, Jose. On this episode, we covered Paul Schrader's First Reformed, starring Ethan Hawke. This is our biggest Rotten Tomatoes discrepancy yet, with a 94% from the critics and a 69% from the audience. This is an A24 movie from 2017 about a reverend from a church in upstate New York who has an encounter with this unstable environmental activist and his pregnant wife. This is one of those artsy movies that focuses more on themes and studying the main character than actual plot. So there aren't going to be any huge plot spoilers. The only thing is, if you haven't seen this and plan on seeing it and want to go into it with a blank slate, we will talk about the ambiguous ending and kind of an inciting incident that you may, want to watch the movie first before going into it. But if you don't have plans to see this, or you're not sure if you want to see it, you should be good to listen. Just a reminder to like, subscribe, leave a review or comments everywhere. I really appreciate it. Also, check out Jose's podcast, where I spent 2024 as a co-host. It's Watch Skip Plus, if you're unfamiliar, and they review the new theatrical releases every week. They just released a special bonus episode on the 2025 Oscars, where they talk about all the nominations and they make their predictions for the winners. By the time you're hearing this, I think we'll already know the winners, but it's still fun to hear their discussions and to see how accurate they were. So here's our conversation on First Reformed, and thank you for tuning in. So where I wanted to start with you is, I want to know, this is unrelated to the movie we're talking about, but how many movies do you watch in a year?
I don't know.
You don't?
I would be afraid to hazard a guess, quite honestly, because I mean, would you count repeat watches, or
Yeah.
are you talking? Okay, yeah, then it's a lot. I don't really know what the true number is.
Okay.
Maybe like our main character here in this movie, I should do it for a year, and maybe tear out some pages or not finish the
Yeah.
journal like he did.
How many do you watch a week?
So during the week can be a little tough. Because I think a lot of times what I end up doing is I'm watching either like Dark Shadows or something like that. But I try to do, maybe like 2 during the work week, and then obviously the movie that I would have to review.
Yeah.
Plus maybe 2 that I would watch with Scooter just on my own. Actually, we have a Netflix preview thing for this weekend.
That's
Yeah.
exciting. You can't say what it is,
But
right?
shh, I can't talk about it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm kind of glad not to be having to go to the theaters every week, because we've gotten so much snow, and
Oh, really?
it doesn't melt. It just like stays throughout the week. So we had like three straight weeks of snow, and
Wow.
it snowed like once a week, but we were getting 4 to 6
Bombarded.
inches at a time. Every time I'd start to see a blade of grass, it just dump, and then it wouldn't melt because it was 10 degrees out. So
That is
tired
amazing.
of it.
So, in Maryland, where all the crazy weather happens, we didn't really get a lot of like quote unquote snow days. But I don't know about you, but at my job, because we all signed the telework policy, it didn't matter that the snow shut down the courts. It was like, well, now you have to telework, and it was like,
Yeah.
Anyway.
yeah, snow doesn't matter. Like, you still just work from home, but I don't know.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's nice to not have to get out in the cold weather.
I know that's right.
Okay, so we are talking about First Reformed.
Yeah.
From it was in the festival circuit in 2017, theatrically released in 2018. This is going to be the second of 3 movies in a row that I'm covering that release in 2017.
Oh,
And
interesting.
None of them were my choice, so I think that's interesting. 3 out of the first 4. So First Reformed has a 94% with the critics and a 69% with the audience. So this is the biggest discrepancy so far. and we are going to talk about why we think there's such a big discrepancy there.
I'll tell you why. It's slow. It's slow moving.
Yeah, it is pretty
And
slow.
I got to tell you that so I, I think you know this. I'm obsessed with Paul Schrader.
I
And
didn't know that.
You didn't know that?
No.
So do you remember how we had how Justin had created the Watch Skip theme song that had little quotes or whatever?
Yeah.
And I'm saying something like, I'm obsessed with that man. I want to marry that man. I was talking about Paul Schrader, actually.
Okay.
There's just something about his movies that, I don't know, I think strangely it speaks to me, even though the themes around his films tend to be like God's lonely man or something like that. People going through like an existential crisis in some ways. But more to the point, what I find interesting about a lot of his lead characters is that they aspire to do these wonderful things, right?
Mm-hmm.
They aspire to connect to people, but in a way, they are their own problem. They cannot get out of their own way to do what it is that they aspire to do, and they end up destroying themselves. And so, if you look at his films, like, and the reason why I say I think people don't like it is because it's slow. There was a time when Schrader like couldn't miss, right? I mean, he wrote like Raging Bull or Patty Hearst, things like that. And then suddenly he just was not the director du jour. And he, in 2013, he couldn't get the funding together to make The Canyons. The infamous Canyons that he made with Lindsay Lohan and the porn star James Dean or whatever. But and he Taxi Driver and American Gigolo, he wrote those. But his movies just really, really speak to me, and I love them. So I think the reason why people hated it is he loves to do these character studies, and it can often just be people sitting in a room talking.
Yeah.
And I think people maybe expected a little bit more from this, but
yeah, I listened to an interview with him earlier this week, and he said his writing process used to be he would write at night, and to stay awake and to stay writing, it was caffeine, it was weed, it was alcohol, it was cocaine, it was anything he could take that would keep him awake and keep his mind turning. And then he said once he had kids, he had to start writing during the day and just like change from a nocturnal animal to a normal human, I guess. So I don't know when his kids were born, but I wonder if that was
certainly changed the material.
Yeah, I wonder if that's where like since the material changed and he started going slower instead of the faster paced stuff.
Yeah. Have you seen a lot of his films?
Not really. I've seen Taxi Driver and Raging Bull, obviously.
Yeah.
Mishima, Life in 4 Chapters has been on my watch list for a long time.
Okay.
I haven't pulled the trigger. That might be it, other than First Reformed, which I had seen before. But like The Last Temptation of Christ, Bringing Out the Dead, and then I think Dog Eat Dog for some reason are all on my watch list.
Oh my God. Dog Eat Dog is an experience. You have to see that. But like, I mean, I've seen American Gigolo, The Card Counter, Mishima, The Canyons, Light Sleeper, Blue Collar, Affliction, Cat People, Hardcore, Dog Eat Dog, Dominion, Raging Bull, Autofocus, Dying of the Light, wow, Rolling Thunder, The Yakuza. Like I love him. I've been through a lot of his shit.
Yeah. Do you see a difference in him from like when he writes something versus when he directs? Like is the finished product like drastically different?
Yeah, I think so. Okay. I think because he does have a way of filming and framing. It's often very proscenium like. There's no fancy camera moves. It's weird. His stories can be so simple, but they're also very kind of impactful.
Okay. Yeah.
Sort of like this one. I think this one has a lot to unpack. What did you think about it?
So I watched it for the first time in September of 2021. So
okay.
3.5 years. Yeah, 3.5, 4 years. And I think I went into it thinking it was going to be a horror movie. And there was
Huh.
like the religious aspect of it was going to be something like The Exorcist. And it
Okay.
wasn't that at all, but I still, like, I was hooked. I was into it and I really enjoyed it. And then this
Okay.
time, I still liked it. I still gave it a 4 stars out of 5 on Letterboxd. But I'm not sure if the environmental side worked for me as well.
Why didn't that work for you? Did you I know that a lot of people were like, "Oh, Schrader goes environmental or climate change." But I
Yeah.
don't think he snuck it in there for that purpose. Like,
Yeah, I think the first time I watched it, I thought that was the purpose. And I was like, oh, this is a powerful message. Like, environmental anxiety is a real thing. Do I want to bring kids into this world when the world's going to shit or whatever? And then on this time, it was much more obvious to me that it was like a mental illness that the Michael character was facing. As soon as he was on screen and was giving his reasoning, I was like, Jesus, you got to get this guy some help. When on the first watch, I was like, oh my God, he's so right. Listen to this guy, clapping my hands.
yeah.
But I had the opposite this time, and I was thinking that it didn't even have to be environmental. It could have been any other issue that he's an activist for and an extremist for, and it would have probably had the same effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. I think so. But it's interesting that he chose something as polarizing, right? Because that, Ethan Hawke's character, what is his name again? Pastor
Toller, yes.
Toller. Okay.
Toller.
Yes. So it's interesting that sort of what happens between him counseling, this sort of misguided guy, not necessarily misguided, but obviously Amanda Seyfried, the wife, is worried about him. She's also pregnant or whatever. Obviously, it's the catalyst that sets everything into what happens with this character and his character study. There are a lot of things that I find really interesting about that character. First of all, we don't see what he's like before all of this.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
And
a good
so
point.
we're left to piece together his sort of background. And so he just sort of, the screenplay sort of just hints at these things that have happened. So, we learn that he has raised a kid. We learn that he has guilt over the fact that he encouraged his son to enlist because it was something that was traditional, right? And then he dies in Iraq, right? And so then when he makes the grisly discovery, that scene is so incredible, by the way, where he's like, first of all, he has that flip phone, and I'm like, God damn it. I know you made a vow of poverty, but get a fucking iPhone or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he's got and it says, meet me somewhere else, where it was supposed to be their next counseling. And then he shows up and there's just like, spaghetti soup, a body, and a rifle or whatever.
I loved how it was framed too, where the camera's moving backwards and we're seeing him like walking on the trail, and then he just stops and his face changes. And you're like, what's he looking at? What's he see? I thought the guy would be sitting there with a gun, like about to kill him for some reason. And
right, exactly.
Then he's dead. SpaghettiOs. Yeah.
Yeah. But then what's crazy too is that the camera then starts to linger on him and like him looking around like does somebody see me or whatever. And I think that's an interesting way to sort of couch that, because it takes several minutes before he's like, ugh, guess I gotta call the police, but you can kind of see the wheels turning like, is this gonna send him off the deep end again? Because what we understand is that his son dies. Obviously it kills his marriage. And then we learn that he sort of had maybe a sexual relationship or brief fling with a woman at a larger church, the Church of Abundant Life.
I wasn't sure if that was his ex-wife or, if it was they had a romantic
I think he was trying to start up an emotional relationship and then he couldn't.
Yeah.
So actually, can we just like talk about the part that I thought was just so standard, which was that I I mean I short of the screenplay saying he impregnated Amanda Seyfried, like I kind of called that like she would maybe fall in love with him or he would have some sort of connection with her. Like I think that's the weakest part of the screenplay. Like I think if you would cut all that out, it would still have the impact that it did.
Yeah, I think I have some questions about their relationship. I mean, the ending's completely ambiguous.
Oh, I'm glad you said that because I was like, am I going to get roasted for saying I think he killed himself?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know, and I'm fine with ambiguous endings to movies. I'm fine saying I don't know what happened and I don't need it explained to me. But
thank you. You're a rarity.
Yeah. I was like either he's dead and like this is some illusion, this is how his brain is interpreting or dreaming that it ends. But we see like Cedric the Entertainer's in this movie.
Oh my god, in a Schrader movie. I was like, what the hell?
But Cedric the Entertainer is like trying to get in to see Toller at the very end, and he can't get in because all the doors are locked. So then whenever it jumps to she's in that room,
yeah,
that's where I'm like, I don't think literally that she is
right
in that room because I don't know how she would have gotten in, but also like she's in the room. They're showing me on camera. She's in this room. Am I supposed to take that as they're showing me or not? And
well, we also saw them float in the air.
Yeah.
Light as a feather. What is it?
Light as a feather, stiff as a board.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So you were talking about the beginning, how we know he had that trauma. I think something else that is kind of cool is the voiceover that they do, which is him journaling. And we do kind of learn more about him before the camera starts rolling. Like he is having a crisis of faith probably because he says he can't pray anymore. Yeah. And this is his way of doing it. And so you're like, okay, does he not believe in what he's doing anymore? What's happening there?
I don't understand the deal with after a year I will destroy this journal. Like what? Sir?
Yeah, I don't know. I think like it's probably a good thing to set goals and to set an intention. I'm sure you're more likely to follow it every day if you're like, I'm going to do this every single day, and then at the end, this is going to happen. Yeah, I don't know if he's doing that or what, but I don't know. Good for him.
Good for him.
But I was going to say a topic that this movie, I think, brings up is the idea of isolation. So when you were talking about when he finds the dead body, too, he's looking around seeing if anyone's there. But maybe it is a way to show him isolated. And I think what this movie kind of shows is like how isolation to the extreme can be dangerous because he's very isolated in that old church. No one goes to it anymore. Like there's 6 people in the audience on Sundays. Everyone's going to the big super mega church. And he's just alone. He's alone every night. And also the way that his house or apartment or whatever it is set up, like there's one table, there's one bed, like everything is so isolated that it also kind of leads me to that conclusion.
Yeah. You know what? It's funny you mention that because obviously this is a character where there's just a ton of shit weighing on him and he clearly has not processed it properly. And it's very interesting the dichotomy that's set up between the church that he's a reverend in and then Abundant Life, which is it's ginormous. There's
even
like
the name
this
of it.
I know, Abundant Life. There's like a cafeteria. He has to be buzzed into Cedric's office. Cedric's office is huge. It's got like, did you see the little pictures that are arranged like in a cross?
No.
on the far right, like a little tiny cross. I'm like, oh my God, this is too much. Stop. It's too on the nose. But when I look at Ethan Hawke's character, in a way, what I see is not only somebody who's isolated, but someone who has been marginalized as well. Because he was put there for a reason. I'm still not very clear on what that reason is. Like, did Cedric find out he was banging the mousy girl and was like, oh, no, you can't be here. You've got to be, right? Or did he choose that because he wanted to isolate himself? He did not want to socialize. He wanted to, live this life of, just straight faith and religion because he tried the marriage. He tried raising a child and it didn't work out.
Yeah.
So to me, that was interesting that in a way he was like sort of like marginalized or tucked away because clearly the older man that kind of looks like, busted James Cameron, like he comes and you know what I mean? He's playing the organ or whatever.
Yeah, I put in my notes. I was like, what James Cameron looking ass here playing the organ.
I know. But even he like shows up to assist him and make sure things are going well. And then he's constantly like, do you want me to call the Abundant Life boys? Should we ask Abundant Life or whatever? So,
and he always says no. I feel like that maybe speaks to Ethan Hawke's character isolating himself. Like, the organ doesn't work, and he's like, yeah, we'll get it fixed. They say we need a part or something. And he's very inactive about it until Abundant Life steps in, and they're like, okay, we sent people here. They're here. They fixed it. I feel like there's a lot of inaction by him, and I don't know if it's maybe what you said, like he's isolating himself from Abundant Life or from society or everyone else, or if maybe he's lazy and going crazy and all that stuff.
Well, we also learn that much like me, he has not had a physical in quite some time. He has not processed. He's hidden away from certain things, and he's sort of throwing himself into religion. Which brings me to another sort of
maybe that's what got him after his son died. Like, maybe he also didn't know how to process and threw himself into religion when that happened too. But go on. Sorry.
I was going to say what brings me to another sort of interesting point about the movie is that you were right. You were talking about the Church of the First Reformed, about how there's like literally 6 people. He's in a way almost like going through the motions of writing a sermon each week. For who? 4 people, right?
Yeah.
And then there's another scene where we see him and he's like, the church was built in so-and-so. We have a souvenir shop, right?
Giving a tour, yeah.
Yeah, and then the guy's like, what size are these shirts or whatever? And then he buys one and skippers off like off the front. You know what I mean? It was weird. So he's doing these tours. And it got me thinking, when you think about that and then you think about Abundant Life and that scene where he's talking to him in the office and Cedric the Entertainer is like, you have no idea what it takes to run a place like this and have the money keep coming in and the coffers and this and that. And it's like, wait a minute, this is a church. Like, when did it become a corporation?
Well, you're asking society a good question, because when I lived in Colorado Springs, I was across from a mega church, and I looked it up. The founder of it or whatever got in trouble for embezzling money. Oh, it's under new ownership. It's different. We're good. We want to help people. So I think that's kind of the point of Abundant Life in this movie.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying it reflects everyday life and what's happening, I don't know, in 2017 and now.
So what's interesting about, and again, I'm trying to look at this objectively, like I'm a recovering Catholic, right? But what I find interesting about what I brought out of this film was that the church is always sort of preaching to its followers, like, we're here for you, man. So if you're depressed, if you've got this issue, just open your hearts to us and talk to one of our pastors or whatever, but keep giving, et cetera, et cetera. But the moment Toller brings to Cedric the Entertainer's attention the fact that, the climate is dying, and why can't we use our followers to sort of send out this message, because you know, if God made us in our image, what would God think if when we're destroying the world? And what I found so interesting was that as much as organized religion is like, you know, we're inviting you in to open your hearts to our message and we want us to be communal, that the bigger it gets, the less there is of that. The more that it's come to our service, patronize our events, give us money, do this or whatever. And then when you come to them with an issue, it's like, say 5 Hail Marys and you're going to be fine or whatever. Now, granted, he gets in a way he gets radicalized, right? This thing happens to him, and nothing comes good of Googling at night while you're drunk, as we see.
So that's kind of, while I agree with your sentiment, I was thinking that that Toller goes to Cedric the Entertainer after the Michael guy has died, and he says that, and I thought this was after Ed Balk like came and they like got in that disagreement where like Ed was saying, you know, let's not be too political, let's not get involved in that stuff, like let's keep it away from all the climate change stuff. So I thought Cedric the Entertainer knew about the guy dying and knew about Ethan Hawke saying something at his burial at the polluted facility or whatever, and Cedric being like, oh God, like, are we losing this guy? Like, is he crazy? Like, we already know he went to this guy's thing. Like, is he being radicalized for this movement? So I wasn't sure Cedric the Entertainer, like, while I agree with what you were saying, if he was also like, let's not forget that we're not worried about the environment right now. Let's think about the church, just to maybe stop him from being so like turning into another version of the guy that killed himself.
Yeah, I mean, I think all those points are valid, but I think the point that he is making is that as much as we want to talk about the separation of church and state, there's all these forces that affect it. And, you know, you brought up that Ed Balk scene, and I just had to laugh because, like, I'm obsessed with that actor, Michael Gaston. Like, I just think he's so sexy.
What do I know him from?
He was on, like, Fringe. He's been in everything. He always plays, like,
Fringe.
A heavy. He always, like, comes in and he's the douchebag, basically.
I was wondering if it was like Spotlight or something and he was a pedophile like that, because as soon as I saw him I was like, I remember fucking hating this guy.
I hate this guy. Yeah, because he always plays those douchebag roles, right?
Yeah.
He's always in your face. But that particular scene, like, it just goes to show how organized religion has kind of turned into a circus when you get as big as an organization like Abundant Life, because he's like, whoa, wait a minute, the governor's going to be there, and you know, this thing, it's a political stunt. It was a political stunt, and Toller's like, I followed through on his wishes.
Yeah.
Right. And then they get into that whole thing like, well, weren't you doing this? Weren't you supposed to be counseling? And he died. He killed himself. Right. Oh,
yeah. That was harsh.
Let's not cast stones. I know. It was so harsh. I was like, how's that fucking apple pie, motherfucker?
Jesus.
But
that scene also, that scene and the scene where Toller goes to speak to the children at Abundant Life, I think something that I picked up from this movie on my rewatch was that Toller's kind of the only person that seems to be fine with ambiguity, and everyone else is saying, this is how it is. This is the way the world works. This is what we should be doing or shouldn't be doing. And he's like, well, no, like, maybe we just, it's fine that things don't go well, you know? Like, even the Michael character says, is his name Michael, the guy that shot himself? Like,
oh, I'm not sure.
I thought so.
I
think,
don't know. Yeah, no, I think it's Michael.
Okay. But did you pick up on that at all, or do you think I'm crazy?
No, I don't think you're crazy, but my go around watching this again, I think it was like maybe my third or fourth time that I've seen this, and I keep saying I'm going to listen to the commentary to really truly understand what's happening, and I never do. But so this time around when I watched it, what I got the sense was, not only does he still not know himself and how to get over the tragedies that have happened in his life, he's still trying to figure out how to be a good reverend.
Yeah.
Because in the beginning, when he comes out, he doesn't look comfortable giving that sermon, like at all. He seems very unsure. And this time around, when I was watching him counsel that Michael guy, he didn't know what to say. Like
Yeah.
he was not doling out the best advice, really.
I was wondering if that was the point, maybe, like that this job can be very hard, especially when you're dealt with these extreme circumstances where this guy wants to abort their baby because he's scared of the environment. Like, what you probably should say is, I think he gave good advice with he like turned it around to be like, well, I was a father and he brought that perspective up, but I think what you should do is not
Don't
be
lose hope.
scared.
Don't
And
lose
yeah,
despair.
and then whenever you have a kid, be like, you can't lose hope. Like, you need to teach them that so that they're not another one of you.
So, but what I think is interesting though is when he writes in the journal, he's kind of like, I think I fucked up.
Yeah.
Like he was like, I didn't know the words, like, because he's suffering with despair and hope, and this
And
is
he's an alcoholic, and
well, you know, that too, but
maybe it was in his mind.
I love that shot where there's the alcohol and then he pours the Pepto-Bismol in it, and
Oh
it's
my
like
God,
this
yeah.
big ball, like a cancer growing inside something, or like us poisoning the world, right?
Oh,
I
I
love
didn't think
that
of that.
visual.
Yeah, like a
But
man-made thing going into this, like, naturally brewed or concocted. That's interesting.
yeah, but so one of the reasons that I also think Paul Schrader is amazing is that he was, I forget what the religion is. It might be Calvinist, but when he grew up in, I think, Michigan, and his family was very strict Calvinist religious upbringing. Get this, he'd never seen a feature film until he went to college.
Dang.
So his entire life was this very strict religion thing. And so a lot of his films touch upon, you know, just being put upon by forces you really didn't have
Yeah.
a choice for. And then it sort
Yeah.
of guides your well-being and how you motivate yourself. And what I got from this and knowing that about Paul Schrader was it's interesting that we turn to pastors or reverends, and we think that they have all the answers. We think that they somehow are our conduit to God, but they are really just human beings
Yeah.
dealing with the same fucked up shit we all deal with.
It's
you
the
know?
same as like anybody that you idolize or look up to. Like, you know, you see people and you're like, man, they got it good. Like, I wish I could be like them. Maybe if I did this, I could live a life like they do. But they still struggle with different things in their
Yeah.
day-to-day life. I was wondering if Toller maybe isn't just going crazy, but if it is cancer or something else, and there's like a tumor in his brain, and it is biologically altering the way that he thinks and is making him do these crazy things, like not turning in the bomb that he finds, and making him think the way where he gets like radicalized by that extremist.
Honestly, I think that is certainly a way to look at it. The film is certainly open to a bunch of interpretations. But I still keep going to the fact that he just isn't. I was listening to this podcast. Actually, it was an interview of like a porn star. But anyway, they were talking about how, like, you know, you can't service others. I know that's so strange in the context of what I just said. That you can't service others unless you've actually like served yourself and made yourself happy. You can't make other people happy unless you have made your own self happy, right? And so when I see his character, the Toller character, he still has no idea how to comfort himself. And so he's still stumbling through being this pastor. I mean, reverend. There's no other way to explain that. When he and Seyfried have that scene where she comes in and she says, oh, I used to have this thing with Michael where we would just lay on each other and we would try to, like, as much contact as we could, stare at each other's eyes and this and that or whatever. And then he goes, so you want me to do this with you? Like, pastor I know would do that. But yet to him, it's something it seemed organic that it came out of him just based on his own situation.
Well, that's another scene that I question. It's legitimacy. Like I question it being real.
Yeah,
Obviously, because it turns into them flying over the PowerPoint presentation of
of climate
yeah.
change. Yeah,
But like it is that line that he says. Like it sounds like he's just fantasizing about it. Like, oh, you it's like if she goes and is like, well, I'm so horny, but my husband died, and then he's like, well, you want me to have sex with you? And then she's like, no,
it's like a
but
porno.
yeah, I guess that would work. Let's do it. Yeah, it is like a porno. That's how I kind of saw that scene, especially since there's no, it just cuts to black, and then it's
Yeah,
the next day. Like you don't see how it ends
yeah.
or
I mean,
what
it could have been an
happens.
alcohol fueled
Yeah,
Google journey.
definitely. I think we find it interesting that it is ambiguous, even in its themes. Like I see all these things that we're talking about in this movie, but it's not like it's hitting us over. I don't feel like it's hitting us over the head with the, climate change is bad or anything about religion. It doesn't even pose the questions. It gives us a lot of material and then asks us to pose the questions. And I
Yeah,
feel like that's where an audience, even if they hear good things about this movie, and they're like, "Oh, I want to see it. It's an A24 movie. I hear it's good. I like Ethan Hawke. I like him." And then they watch it and then they're disappointed. Like I can see how they get disappointed because it's not, I don't feel like it's posing the questions. It's giving you the information.
yeah,
And what I think is interesting too is it strips away any excess. So like how I talked about with the production design in his apartment. There's nothing on his desk. There's one light source in the room, like that's how they do the lighting. There's nothing on the walls, there's nothing in the rooms. And I feel like whenever as a filmmaker, whenever you do that, there's two options. The audience, like me and you and possibly critics, we lean into it and we're like, okay, it's stripped away, doesn't matter. What is there to focus on? And we're focusing on all these questions and the journey that he's going on and what's real and what's not. But then other people, I think it leaves them cold and they kind of run away from it. Even if you want to like this movie, I think that is something that maybe can make people like shy away from it and be like, this sucks. It's not asking any big questions. It's not as important as it thinks it is. What's the point of this? It's not telling me anything. How should I feel? What questions should I be asking? It doesn't do that because it strips it all away, gives you some stuff, but you have to draw all the conclusions.
I think the word we're looking for is austere. Austere.
Yeah.
Severe or strict in manner, attitude, or appearance, having an extremely plain and simple style or appearance unadorned.
Mm-hmm.
But oftentimes when religious personnel, I guess we're going to call them reverends, pastors, whatever, they take that vow of like poverty and chastity or whatever. That's the austereness, right? Like monks sitting in a monastery. That's austere. And it's weird. I don't mean to speak for what you just said, but what you just said isn't, we're not looking down on the people who see this and want a definite answer and therefore are turned off by it.
Well,
Like,
I am. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, I'm just saying, if you don't get it, you don't get it, right?
Yeah.
But when this is what makes film and cinema so interesting, is when you get challenging material like this that makes you think about, what is a character's motivations? Why am I seeing these things? And some people don't want to. It's like the people that don't want to read War and Peace. They'd rather read, some bodice ripping romance thing. Like, what's that going to do for you? I don't know. It does something for them. It doesn't do it for me. But I love that this is open to interpretations. And
I think I can take yours another step further where like I can also see how this movie doesn't make people think, because it kind of rips a lot of stuff away from you. Like everything is like the environment stuff. You have that very extreme man telling you everything. but then the movie doesn't really do anything with it. And so I see how you can come away with this from this movie and be like, yeah, it talks about climate change, but what's it saying? It's not really saying anything. I see how people can say that, but I think what we are saying is the point is that you're supposed to think about it. Like, yeah, what is climate change? How does that relate to these characters in my experience watching this film?
And I think maybe the other point is just the sort of dogma of religion and just its own structure doesn't open itself up to the variability of life and the issues that we experience, right? So climate change, transgender, non-binary, lesbian, LGBTQ or whatever, stuff that's not in the Bible, right?
Yeah.
That dogma of religion can turn people away and then simultaneously attract people who don't want that outside element. Another thing that I think comes out in this too is if you pay attention to some of the Bible quotes that they use, there's a lot of violent shit in the Bible. And so it's interesting that we have religion, which is supposed to be this peaceful thing that brings us all together. And, to be sure, the Bible talks about treating one another well and being a good Christian, etc. Love thy neighbor. But it's also full of a lot of violent stuff where, Jesus went into the temples and like broke up the marketeers and the gamblers and stuff like that, and had a whip and all this. And so it's a weird double-edged message that religion can sometimes send.
Yeah, I think something else is people still struggle when it's the ever-enduring issues like losing a child and guilt. Like, he's a reverend, he knows the Bible in and out probably, so like if there is something to gain in it that helps with these issues, like he should be the one to understand it and like come to acceptance with the issues he's facing, but he can't. And I think it speaks to kind of what you were saying, like it can be ambiguous, and he's not getting all the answers he needs like other people aren't with the environment or with all the other stuff you mentioned.
Yeah, it's a question of faith.
Yeah.
First of all, we should mention that this film features the worst dead squirrel ever committed to celluloid. So
where's a dead squirrel?
Do you Okay. So he's cleaning up the First Reformed cemetery, and they had wrapped barbed wire around the extreme part of the cemetery, presumably to keep out animals or something from destroying the ground and etc. And he pulls a dead squirrel that had been caught up in the barbed wire, but like it's literally he's literally like this. He picks it up and it's like rigor mortis or whatever, and then he takes the barbed wire off. That is the barbed wire he wraps around himself at the end. And so just the imagery of that, of kind of like a squirrel caught in it, and now he's the squirrel wrapping himself in the fucking barbed wire at the end to torture himself.
I literally didn't even notice the squirrel because as soon as I saw the barbed wire, it like flashed in my brain like, oh my god, yeah, I remember the end of the movie now where he wraps it around him. I always, even on the first watch, I thought it was interesting that he has the barbed wire and he doesn't wrap it around his head like a crown of thorns.
Yeah. But I liked that it was his body because, it just encompasses everything. Like, he wants a relationship, but he had a marriage, and then his son died, his own blood, his own body. And so just wrapping that all up, it was like intense.
It visualizes how he's been feeling throughout the entire movie.
Yeah.
It was hard to watch too. Like you see it.
Oh my god, I know.
Oh gosh.
And then he puts the frock on and like the blood starts seeping through it or whatever. I was like, "Oh, please let this man find peace."
That's another reason why about the end, like she comes up and is hugging him and pressing her body up against him.
Yeah, wouldn't she be hurt?
Yeah.
Wouldn't she be like, "Ow, what is that?"
Yeah. I don't know. I like this movie.
I like it too.
I don't think I liked it as much the second time. I don't know. I think the first time I was expecting a horror movie, something along the lines of like Saint Maud.
Oh yeah.
Where even that, I guess that's not really a horror movie, but you're like kind of questioning what's real, what's not. I thought maybe we were going to get something a little spookier.
Yeah.
And instead it's this character study of a pastor and all the stuff he's dealing with, and I feel like I was sucked into it and I really enjoyed it. And I still enjoyed it this time, but the slow burniness got to me a little bit.
Yeah. It is definitely deliberate pacing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I still think he died at the end.
Yeah. Oh, I did want to point out the opening, the title credits or whatever, as it like slowly pans to zoom in onto the beautiful church.
Yeah.
The font it was in is like this beautiful cursive font, and then it shows a clock, and like it says the name of the clock in it, and it like matched that font. And then he's like writing beautiful handwritten notes. I was like, you can't understand a word that I write. Like, it looks nothing like that. So I was very jealous from the start of this movie.
Hey, let me ask you this, because this is terrible. This is absolutely terrible.
Uh-oh.
I never thought Ethan Hawke was a great actor. I never
Really?
did. I never did. Also, I grew up, I'm not going to say I grew up with him, but I remember seeing Explorers as a kid and then being like, oh, that's the fucking Explorers kid as an adult. And then, of course, he married Uma Thurman and then they divorced. And I was like, oh, you must be a horrible dick for her to divorce you or whatever. But I never thought he was a good actor, but he's so good in this.
I don't know if I ever thought he was like, has he ever won a big award?
You know what? I mean, he was in those Sunrise movies.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, I thought he was really good in those. Okay, so Academy Awards, he's nominated twice for Best Supporting Actor for Training Day. That's a pretty good performance. And then Boyhood.
Overshadowed by the Denzel.
Yeah, obviously.
And then Boyhood, yeah, I'm going to be great too if you keep filming me for 10 years and paying me. I'm just kidding. But no, seriously, I never thought that Hawke was really that great. The only effective performance for me that I had seen of him before First Reformed was Taking Lives with Angelina Jolie. Do you like how I said that?
Angelina
Jolie. You've never seen Taking Lives?
No.
Oh, please see it. He's really, really good in it. But I really liked him in this. I got shades of like Harrison Ford intensity, like, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I like him. I watched Gattaca for the first time this month.
Oh shit, I forgot. That is a good role of his. Damn it.
Yeah.
Directed by Andrew Niccol. Really, Gattaca was good. Yeah. That was choice.
Him and Uma's daughter, Maya, look just like both of them.
I know. It's scary.
I've never seen anything like it before.
It's like they put they put both of them in the Brundlefly machine from The Fly. And then out of Pod C popped Maya Hawke. Snort.
Okay, I'm trying to see. I'm just looking through the rest of his stuff.
Did you ever watch The Card Counter?
No, it was on my list. Like I kept almost going to theaters to watch it, and then I was like, I've heard it's not that good, actually. Do you like it?
Be prepared for another deliberately paced Paul Schrader, because a lot of things happen in that movie, and I'm like, where are we going with this? But it's good. I liked it.
Well, it's got an 88% with the critics and a 42% with the audience. So
see, I'm telling you, this is First Reformed and The Card Counter are kind of the same deliberate paced character study. Yeah, but I loved it. I've seen it like 4 times.
Cool. It's been on my watch list. I love Oscar Isaac, so I'll check it out.
He's good.
Yeah, I think that's all I had.
Are you gonna watch more Paul Schrader films?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if I'm gonna be like
me watching all of them.
No, like oh my gosh, what's his name? R.I.P. Gene Hackman, where
Oh,
I've been on the cusp of like just going into all of his movies,
yeah.
and then now we find out today he died, and it's like, okay, now's the time. Like now I'll go into all the ones that I was like Mississippi Burning has been on my
Yeah.
list. I haven't even seen.
Hoosiers.
I've seen Hoosiers. I'm from Indiana, man.
Okay.
Who do you think I am? Um,
Okay.
I went to IU.
Well,
I haven't seen Superman.
maybe you should what?
Yeah.
Maybe you should do with Gene Hackman what I did with Jeff Bridges, which was I just collected all of his movies
Yeah.
and then watched them all.
Yep.
I may join you in that because there is some stuff of his that I haven't even seen that looks great, that looks good and interesting. Like there's a film called like Eureka that's on streaming. I haven't seen that. Night Moves, man. I've seen that like 3 times. It's so good.
Okay. I mean, you can come back in
Very
a
70s.
month or two because I want to
Yes.
cover it on here.
But not to get too morbid, but it developed. The Hackman situation
Oh, what
developed.
happened?
So remember how it was they found him, his wife,
Yeah.
and one of their dogs dead? Well, the 2 other dogs were not dead, and they sent a gas company over there. There was no signs of a gas leak.
Okay.
And so now it's looking like not necessarily suspicious, but there's some oddities there. The wife was found in the bathroom with like scattered pills. The dog that died
Interesting.
was apparently inside a closet or something. And then Hackman was outside, like in his mud room. I don't even know what a mud room is.
You don't know what a mud room is?
Well, I suspect it's like, the player, Robert Altman, when they're in like the mud, they're lying in the mud or
that's
whatever.
not what.
Oh,
mud-
it's not.
No.
Shit.
A mud room is like a room where, as you enter your house, like through the garage or through a back door, there's a room where, like, if you're muddy or when you're snowy, you can just like shed your clothes off on the ground.
Hence the mud room.
Yeah, that's why like it's typically like a laundry room because then
Got it.
you can take off your muddy, snowy stuff and just like throw it in the washing machine or whatever.
Townhomes don't have a mud room. This is why I'm
No.
missing out. Okay, so he was found in the mud room, collapsed. It looked like maybe he was reaching for his cane or something, and she was in the bathroom, scattered pills, dead dog, was in a closet, and one of the living dogs was found next to the wife. Very odd. Very odd.
Yeah, it says they were probably gone, like dead for quite a while because
Quite a while is what they said. I can't.
yeah, I'll be intrigued. But yeah, he's 95. Like he was gonna go anyways. I